Let's look at one of the craziest rapiers I've ever held in my life. Hi folks, Matt Easton here of Schola Gladiatoria, and you will see that I am at Olympia Auctions, and that is because there's a sale coming up on the 26th of June, and I'm here to look at and handle all of the amazing things that are coming up in that sale and share some of that with you here on the channel. And this is an item which I saw in the auction catalogue and wasn't intending to make a video about. But when I saw it in real life, I had to grab it and I had to put it on film. It is an absolutely incredibly gorgeous, but also crazy, and I'll tell you why in a second, crazy Spanish rapier. And you might be getting a hint at why it's so crazy. So first of all, this is a classic Spanish cup hilt. This is lot 158 in the upcoming sale, and it dates to about 1640, maybe 1630 to 1650, that kind of range, so the middle of the 17th century. And this style of Spanish cup hilt is relatively late in the history of rapiers. So we've spoken about cup hilts in the past. A lot of people, when you think of rapier, you think of a cup hilt rapier, but actually cup hilt rapiers are a relatively late evolution of rapiers, and swept hilts had been around for 100 years before that. Well, not quite 100 years, but a good 70 years before that. So this is a Spanish cup hilt. Now, sometimes you will see these described as Spanish or possibly Italian. This is described in the catalogue as possibly from Brescia. Personally, I think it's definitely Spanish, and I'll tell you why in a second. But you should know that certain parts of Italy did come under strong Spanish influence in the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly around Naples. But in addition, Italian sword makers, who were very prolific, did also make swords in the Spanish style and for the Spanish market. And just to confuse things, the Spanish also made rapiers in other people's styles for other markets as well. So places like Brescia, which is now known for the firearms trade, but back in the day was making a lot of swords, and places like Toledo, very famous for making swords, and Solingen were making swords and exporting them all over Europe. So this is probably a Spanish rapier, and in fact it has a name on it, and this is why I think it's probably Spanish, because it says Pedro on one side, Lecama, I believe the name is. So Pedro Lecama. Now, obviously Pedro is the Spanish form of Peter, and if it was Italian it would be Pietro. So I think probably Spanish, but of course it could be Italian made for the Spanish market. That's always possible. Anyway, this is fundamentally a Spanish style sword, regardless of where it was made. And it has an absolutely gorgeous cup hilt there, which you can see it has got a huge amount of piercing work through the iron hilt, and very long straight quillons, as they usually do of this type. The pommel there has engraving on it, on each facet of the pommel, probably a replacement grip. But with Spanish rapiers, you find they have very deep finger rings and long ricassos. That means that you have a very deep cup, which means that the front of the guard is very far away from your hand, which provides quite a lot of protection. So in fact that means in Spanish rapier fencing they move from having one finger over the guard to having two fingers over the guard. This achieves a number of things. It increases the strength of that leverage point over the guard. It also puts your hand deeper into the guard and therefore protects your hand more. So rather than having one finger over and having a lot of the hand showing here, by putting two fingers over, the hand disappears inside the cup and it provides a lot more protection. But it also brings your hand closer to the point of balance. You'll notice that Spanish rapiers, this isn't particularly an example, but they often have very short grips. And the reason for that is because you're not putting 5 fingers around the grip, you're not even putting 4 fingers around the grip, sometimes you're only putting 3 fingers around the grip, you're sometimes only putting 2 fingers around the grip and 2 fingers above and around the ricasso and over the guard. But the real reason that I've pulled out this rapier, which is gorgeous in every other way and would deserve to have a video made about it anyway, is the blade, which is absolutely gargantuan. It's huge. Just to give you a sense of its size, in raw numbers, it is 53 inches measured to the cross. Okay, so if you look in the auction catalogue, it's actually measured to the front of the bowl, but the bowl is very deep. If you measure down to the crossguard, which is really the functional blade length, the base of the ricasso, it's 53 inches. That's huge. So when people complain because I use my 45-inch bladed cup hilt, imagine if I was using a 53-inch blade. Well, I can tell you I want one now. It's absolutely crazy and amazing all at the same time. So 53 inches, I think that's 135 centimeters if I remember correctly. So 135 centimeters. To put that into context alongside another sword, I just happen to have a Spanish montante here, so which is also in the sale. Here is a Spanish montante and here is the cup hilt. If I put crossguard by crossguard, the cup hilt is longer, and not just a bit longer, it's quite a bit longer. It's just absolutely crazy. Now, you might think that a blade which is this long, look, off camera, how do I even get this onto camera? I'd have to point it over there. A blade that's this long, surely it must be only for thrusting and it must be really unwieldy. No, because of one simple reason. They have made it cross-sectioned. Okay, so the cross-section is cross-shaped. It's so hollow ground. If I bring it up close to the camera, right, so let's have a look at this blade. That blade literally has a midrib and is almost completely flat either side of that. Can you see this rib running down here? So it's not flattened diamond section, it's not triangular section, I'd even hesitate to call it a hollow ground because it's so hollow ground it has literally become a cross, and that continues all the way up the blade. Look how broad it is, even towards the tip and at the tip. So this is actually a relatively wide blade with an incredibly thin edge on it here. It's an absolutely monstrous and amazing thing that you can cut and thrust with, and has some flex, but for its length is incredibly stiff, I've got to say. It's not floppy. If I hold it out at full length and wiggle it, does the tip move a little bit? Yes, it moves a little bit, but for its size, for its width versus length, it's incredibly rigid, and that is because its cross-section is a cross like this. It's an absolutely incredible sword, and what a pleasure to hold. I really, really want to get my hands on a fencing replica of one of these and see what it's like to fence with a 53-inch blade. So I'll be talking to some people about that quite soon when I get home. Anyway, thank you a lot for watching. I hope this has been an interesting sword to look at. It's been a wonderful one to hold, and all I can say is if you're able to own this, then do, because it's absolutely gorgeous. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers, folks.